we are here today with Arthur Hall at City Hall to talk about his experiences working in the city, educational background in general. So could you just start off by sharing your full name, graduation year, degrees, everything you've earned up until now?
Yeah, Arthur Hall, Jr. I have to emphasize the junior. And I graduated in 2004, Master of Urban and Regional Planning, and 2002, Bachelor of Arts in Environmental Design, University of Buffalo.
What inspired you to go down this route, that educational route?
Well, this was something that was done, I was led, if you will. I initially started my career with the Buffalo Weed and Seed, and that was back in 1998, 99, here in Buffalo. And believe it or not, before then, my college career started as a computer engineering major. And so I thought that was going to be the new way, which it was, but that just wasn't for me. And so I started looking at what I could transition into. And came across environmental design, and that was something that was very intriguing, and I began to look into it, and that is where I believe God led me, to be honest with you. I knew nothing about it at the time, and so I got in and I met the faculty and staff, and I was a part of the Buffalo Weed and Seed, and I was a part of environmental design. It was a great fit. So, a lot of what we done in the community was tied to what we were doing with Weed and Seed, and some of the outreach efforts was in line. So it was a very fitting major.
And that major was at UB?
Correct, environmental design. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So kind of prior to going to school at UB, where did you go to high school? Where did you grow up?
Well, so I grew up on the east side in the Maston district on Box Avenue. And, that was a very fun place growing up, but it became a very dangerous place, in the 90s, early, mid, and late 90s, just a very dangerous place. I went to McKinley High School, and I was a part of 2 championship football teams, thank you, and one of the greatest schools in the country, high schools, I can attest to that. Very diverse, learned a lot, faculty and staff was great.
And did they work to kind of help encourage you to go to school, to pursue higher education?
Yeah, the thing about McKinley High School is you had teachers that were willing to go the extra mile. So for an example, in our economics class, it was not just learning about, financing and economics, but I remember our economics teacher, coming to school before school would start, like around 7 o'clock, for those students who wanted to learn how to invest in real estate, for those students who wanted to learn how to invest in stocks and bonds, and then staying after school, on certain days, teaching students, how to manage and how to budget, and how to buy a home and things of that sort. So, and you had many teachers that was like that, not just, hey, listen, come to school and, we want to encourage you to go to higher education. They taught us that, hey, listen, if you have a skill in a craft, you can go to school for it, but consider starting a business too. Have your own private economy, So, and it was, on top of that, I think it was very diverse and multicultural. We had, many ethnicities that attended the school. So it was a school for not just higher education, but it was a school for the gifted, really. They really taught you how to enhance your gift as opposed to jumping into higher education and pursuing a career. So that was very important to me.
Yeah, so that was about mid-90s-ish?
That was yeah, mid-90s.
Okay.
Yeah, mid-90s.
Yeah, it's really nice to hear that. I mean,
Yeah.
just kind of slight tangent, but
Right.
you know, now with everyone going to college, getting their degrees, you know, some people are meant for college, some people aren't. So, you know,
Right.
what is an alternative plan? And it's
Right.
really important to hear that schools are encouraging students to be creative based on their abilities, not what is expected of them.
Sure.
So that's really cool. I had a lot of students who went to McKinley, and they have nothing but wonderful things to say about it.
It was a great school.
I mean, that's now they're
Yeah.
super excited about it.
It
So
was a great school.
that's good. I like to
Yeah.
hear that. Beautiful now too. They just renovated.
And I haven't been in it. You know, it's kind of like it's not right. I gotta get in there.
Very cool. So, now you're in, City Hall. You're in Bureau, right?
Yeah.
That's the correct.
Yeah.
I always get confused because you're all in the same office.
Yeah,
So I just want to
right,
make sure.
right.
So what made you choose to apply here, to want to work here?
So it's a story to that, and the story is when I graduated from the University of Buffalo, I was actually working for a nonprofit. I was a program director, and then I was promoted and voted in by the board of directors to be the executive director. And so, long story short, I got married. My wife and I relocated to Orlando, Florida, and that's really where I began my planning career in a professional context.
Mm-hmm.
I've always worked with government,
Mm-hmm.
and I've always worked in a professional environment, but being hired as a planner and a professional was with the Orange County government in Orlando, Florida. And I worked there as a comprehensive planner. So I dealt a lot with land use. We dealt a lot with large and small scale cases, big cases. And it was very much different. I was new to Florida. I was new to Orange County. I was new to Orlando. And a lot was different. So I spent about over 10 years in Orlando, learning so much, about Orlando. And, during my time there, I watched the activity that was going on in Buffalo ever since we left. I never wanted to leave. It was just the circumstances, that again was kind of leading, and also the circumstances here, with working as a planner and things, probably wasn't the best at the time, with the city of Buffalo or any other firm in the city of Buffalo. You go to Orlando, Florida, and there were 10 or 12 planning firms, private, that at least had, anywhere between 15, 20 planners. So, you had a much more priority for planning in the South. So, during my time there, we learned a lot. And I knew that it was, toward the latter years, the opportunity to come back was very viable, it was very fruitful. Again, it was all God's leading. I just can't get away from that. I wish I could say that I was smart enough to know that the trends were going, and you see all of this wonderful development that's happening, and things are transitioning. But that was a big part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
The development of the canal side. People talk about the renaissance of the physical development, and it's evident.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a renaissance and a revival in the people. There was a hope that I haven't seen in years. There was an expectation that I haven't witnessed in a very long time. And the conversation was different. My wife and my family, we'd come back to Buffalo and we'd visit every Christmas. And, we'd talk to people and say, man, a lot is going on. And, I see this building and I see that. And you guys got plans for this and plans for that. And people would say, oh, you haven't seen half of it, And these were people at one time would say, oh, there's nothing in Buffalo. Oh, it's horrible. I'm getting out of here. I'm leaving. There's nothing for me. There's nothing, da-da-da-da-da-da. And, you look at the conversation 5 years ago and then 5 years later, and it's just, you haven't seen the best of it yet. We got this coming, we got that coming. So there's like this new expectation, that people have caught on to and recognized. And so the opportunity came, and there was an opening, and You know, I had applied, and just so happened that there was an opening that my wife qualified for. You know? And so that kind of worked out.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's, I was going to ask you, like, kind of what indicators started to, you know, appear that this would be a really great move back, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think you nailed it, just the attitude in itself. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been here for 10 years now,
Yeah.
and when I first moved here, I wasn't pessimistic, but it was just like, okay, well, you know, I want to travel, I want to do
Yeah.
things, but like the longer I stay here, the more I start to see, you know, free places for families to go.
Yeah.
You know, you can go down to Canal Side, you can go to the
Yeah.
Outer Harbor, there's
Yeah.
everything,
Yes.
and it's not, it's like equally distributed now.
Yes.
Like I had a job on Elmwood and no one would come on the weekends because everyone's down the Canal Side.
Yeah.
And you know, everyone's
Yeah.
down on the waterfront. Like
Yeah.
it's beautiful to just
Yeah.
see people finally seeing the beauty in Buffalo.
And I would have to say a big portion, a big slice of the pie that I'd like to use as an illustration sometimes is it was very much personal. I had a very, very, very deep passion for the development and the prosperity of Buffalo when I was here. When I was a student in planning, and the more I began to learn about it and the more I began to be immersed in it, the more I wanted to take those skills and just make Buffalo better. I wanted to be a part of this renaissance. And, you know, being in Florida, and trust me, the weather's great. Daytona Beach is awesome. And, you know, Disney is always Disney. You always feel like a kid when you go. But there was nothing more motivating and more invoking than to come home and be a part of this renaissance. I told my friends here, I said, listen, we talked about this for years, you know, in undergrad and grad, how we were going to make Buffalo better. You guys aren't going to do this without me, you know. And it was just, and the feeling with my wife was mutual, and my son, you know, he has to get used to being back and not going to Disney every other weekend. So maybe Darien Lake will do that.
I don't know. I mean, Disney, Darien Lake, it's not Six Flags anymore.
I know. Yeah. So yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, just I guess maybe this is another slight tangent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what was Buffalo as a whole like when you were growing up?
Oh,
I mean, not
man.
just specifically your neighborhood, just, you know, what was the larger context?
Buffalo was always a city of good neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
It was a segregated city of good neighbors. The east side where I grew up on, we were good neighbors on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't know much about those neighbors in South Buffalo, and it was relatively different. So it was a place where you could grow. It was a place where you could learn. It was a community. I remember, and I grew up and I'm pretty sure it was different everywhere, but I grew up in an era where, you know, it was the village that raised the child, you know. And I think that it was something that we were exposed to growing up that, you know, had an impact on, you know, the rest of our lives as far as how we governed ourselves, how we lived. We experienced, getting back to the segregation, we experienced kind of a cultural diversity in our school. You go to school and, you know, you see friends and, oh, that's my friend Eric, you know. But, you know, and Eric and I, we'd get along, meet Eric, Josh, you know, we'd get along. And, you know, it wasn't until after a while where it's just like, hey, man, we should get together sometime. Where do you live? Well, I live on Box Street. Where's that? This is over on the east side. Oh, wow. You know, we never told to go over there. You know, it's like, where do you live? I live in Lovejoy. Oh, my goodness, I can't go over there. You know, I live in South Buffalo. Oh, my goodness, you know. But school entities, in institutions like schools, church, community centers, these were places where we were able to get together. And these were the places where it didn't matter where you were from, you know. We're playing basketball, we're boxing. You know, they had a boxing at the PAL in East Utica, you know, and there'd be kids from all over there. You know, at the JFK Community Center, I played football for the JFK Invaders growing up over in downtown, Hickory and Clinton, and kids from all over. So, you know, it was, you had the issue of segregation, but there were parts where you had the opportunity to converse and talk to and engage with those from another area that, you know, you were kind of told to stay away from. And we built great relationships, you know. So growing up, it was a lot like that. I was kind of, you know, tucked away in at the east side, you know. It's just like, that's, you know, you kind of stay here. And we'd ride our bikes, we'd go bike riding, we went bike riding, we'd go all the way to Delaware Park, we'd go up to Hurdle, and, you know, we'd go around in those places. But that was a little bit about, you know, growing up. It was a lot of fun.
Well, you know, now that you're kind of in a position where you can influence what's going on in the city, do any of those experiences you had as a child, you know, kind of like living in, you know, segregation, influence how you approach what you're doing now? Maybe you kind of refute that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think the approach is one approach is there's a way that we have to teach our younger generation. We all grew up with a worldview, you know, whether it's, you know, what our parents teach us, where we go to school, the neighborhood we grew up, the people we hang around. There are many different things that shape our worldview, and I think creating places, because that's where the boundary of these, you know, the mindset of all of the segregation, you know, this is west side, north side, east side, south side. It was places where we were able to come together and engage and interact. So as a planner, my whole idea of impacting the community, the city, the region, Western New York, is really creating healthy, sustainable, vibrant places. Places where people can come together and do just what we did. There's no culture shock. There's no boundary to say this is where you stay, this is where we stay. And Buffalo has become that. There has been slowly but surely some diversity over time. You know, I know I've been away for 10 years and, you know, come back, and there's been some changes. I've noticed some changes, tremendous changes. You know, and many of the festivals and activities and things that you have now, which is a lot more than we had back then. And, you know, you're starting to see this diversity, you know, this agglomeration of people that just gather. And what do they gather for? They gather in a place. You know, there's entertainment, there's food, there's fun, there's bounce houses for kids, you know, there's, you know, it's a place. And so as a planner, I think that creating places that really begin to help people shape a worldview, you know, of equity and a worldview of fairness, liberty, and all of the other things that we enjoy in a community. So, yeah.
Very cool. It is 11. Do you want to grab your ID?
No, let's keep going. As a
Okay.
matter of fact, I think it's 11:15.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much more time do we have? I just checked before we.
Okay. It's up to you. I mean, I can really quickly jump into just experience at UB, and then I think we can be done.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, you answered a lot of the questions just in what you just said.
Oh,
so.
cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
that makes it so much easier.
There
I
we
love
go.
when that happens. So let's just talk a little bit about your experience at UB. So you were there as an undergrad and graduate student.
Yeah. Well, okay? Did you had another question or?
Oh no, I mean, basically, you did answer all my questions about your work. Oh wait, no, you know what I did want to ask you? What are you working on right now? Like, what are you working on in the community?
So there are several things. So I've only been back 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it seems a little longer than that. But so I've been assigned to several really pressing projects. One, I think the first, was the Michigan Street 509 Michigan Avenue, which was a structure that's located just adjacent to the Michigan Street Baptist Church. And there are some DASNY funds, Dormitory Authority for State of New York funds that can be used to rehab that particular structure. So there was a lot of things that was tied up. I don't want to go through all of the African American Heritage Corridor, which is a very, very, very viable and historic place in the city of Buffalo, where the Freedom Trail runs, the Underground Railroad, you know, and enhancing a place like that and really maximizing the historical context, value of a place like that can make it one of the, I believe, greatest attractions in this country. I really believe that, you know. This is where the Freedom Trail is, you know, and it's just like, wow, this is it, you know. So my recommendation was it's not about just rehabbing a building. It's how does this building fit within a context of the history of this place, you know, again, creating a place. So that was one. The other is the Fruit Belt neighborhood, creating a strategic plan. And when I say strategic plan, I'm not talking about a series of recommendations or suggestions as to what they should do, but creating actual policies. And this came out of a request for the council president in order to, you know, fulfill a mandate that he had, so that development could be guided in the Fruit Belt neighborhood. So this is that plan. And a lot of what I've done, I've learned in Florida. A lot of policy development, policy that guides development, that ensures that development is equitable. This is not something to say, hey, listen, let's, you know, put something here, put something here. No, it's, you know, if and when a developer would come with a proposal to build something, here are the policies and the guidelines that regulates that process. So that kind of thing, which is another, you know, tremendous historic area. And there are some focuses on the east side. I know what we are doing is putting together a kind of a cluster development, you know, type of approach that we're looking at. It's still in its early stages, but anyways, I've been assigned to it, so, you know, we're looking at doing some things there. Some of the poverty initiatives that we have, you know, been assigned to some of those. So, you know, there are a series of things that are kind of clumped together that involve those three areas.
Okay. And in terms of these three projects, you know, I am familiar with a fair amount of them,
Sure.
but you know, overarching goals. I mean, obviously, development is very important, but in terms of the relationship between development and the community, you know, what is the goal there?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about, you know, the Fruit Belt, that's a medical campus, you know, that has a huge impact on a community that statistically is not at the same level as the medical campus. So, you know, if you wouldn't mind talking a little bit about the community there.
So I'll talk about the overarching goal in the context of well, I'll talk about all three in the context of the overarching goal. There are three things that the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, what we do, and I believe it's kind of, you know, in these three things, is to engage the residents, educate the residents, and empower the residents. Those three things are paramount when it comes to development. Anytime there is a project or development, you have to have a balance. You have to have the experts at the table, because they're the ones that knows the logistics that need to go into a project, whether it be small or large scale. You have to have leadership, and leadership can be anywhere from a pastor to, you know, a community activist, an executive director of a community center, someone who has that respect and voice of the community. And then you need the layperson. You need the person to come to the table that says, hey, listen, you know, I would like to see X, Y, and Z. You need those people, but you need a balance of each. If you have, you know, too much of the lay vision, and or voice, it will be imbalanced. You know, you'll have a lot of wants without the details as to how to make it happen. So there has to be a balance. You can have too much expertise. You can have too much leadership. You know, there has to be a balance with that stuff. So those three things kind of encompass what we do. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so I mean, maybe we can just wrap up with a little reflection on your time at UB.
Yeah.
You know, this is obviously for UB, and a lot of what I'm sure you're doing today in some respects came from education.
Yeah.
But in terms of your experience there, you know, how did you, I mean, did the school in any way help you connect with the community, or was that something that was already instilled in you before, you know?
That was instilled in me before
Okay.
I went to UB. I think the question that I would propose to the university, which my time at UB was great. Let me answer that. You know, both undergrad and grad, it was great. I met a lot of friends, and I think there was a group of us. You don't even go back to my college days. There was a group of us that from undergrad to grad school, we stayed together, and we were all planners.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about maybe 8 or 9 of us, maybe 10 of us, and we all keep in touch. We have reunions. So just to say, you know, the relationships that I've established, and they're family for life, just great people. But the question that I would pose to UB, I did an interview a long time ago, and I said, you know, how has this prepared you for, you know, life after UB and things of that sort? And I think a better question is, what is the relationship between the employment and the industry and what we're learning in class? Because, you know, when I thought about that question when I was in Florida, I said, I've never experienced this ever before. You you go to a class and, you know, you learn your GIS, which is a phenomenal skill. You learn it, keep it, you know, you learn all of the technical stuff. I think that's good. You learn a lot of theory. Mm-hmm. You know, the history and the theory, I think, is very good. But I think when you come into the profession, there are some things that you're exposed to that you just don't get exposed to in class. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say there's nothing wrong with it, but I think that the relationship needs to be examined. Mm-hmm. What's out in the planning industry? I'm not talking about looking at, you know, the articles on APA. I'm not talking about looking at articles on plant medicine, you know, but I'm really talking about, you know, this, you know, what you're doing. Really looking at what does the job require? You know, what jobs are out there? What did it require? And looking at a job description along next to a syllabus, and, you know, is there any continuity there? And I think the more you begin to look at things like that, and the more you begin to shape, you know, the curriculum a little bit, I think that, you know, the school would be in a much better place. Now, I'm pretty sure there's been some other things that has evolved that is, mm-hmm. you know, is wonderful. I think UB came out with a real estate development major course, mm-hmm. top notch. I think that's phenomenal. I think that's great. Because that's the direction a lot of it is going. When I first took my job, the first thing I was given was a vested rights certificate. My job in Orlando. They said, hey, this guy, he owns 9 acres. He has a you know, residential, commercial. It's a mixed use. It's a planned development, and he wants to get vested rights for his commercial. Can you work with him? He's an attorney. He needs a vested rights. I've never heard vested rights ever in my life as a UB grad or undergrad student. What in the world is a vested rights? Mm-hmm. You know, for commercial. Okay, I do know commercial is a use. Mm-hmm. It's a zoning use and a land use. You know, but you know, you can't learn everything in school. There has to be, you know, you have to learn things as you go. So I do think that there is a way we can balance between, you know, theory and practice, but I think the practice would be a little more. But on that note, the things that I did get a chance to do hands-on, the colloquium classes were awesome. They were really awesome. I know we, at the time, we did a design for Hilbert College that was looking for, a dormitory, facility. I was a HUD fellow student, so I really got a chance to be out in the community and, doing things. I think when Dr. Taylor did a plan for the fruit belt, we were a part of that. We're part of the Maston District Plan. So there were things that we were able to do hands-on, which were very good. Those were some very good courses and some things. But I think to be at the cutting edge, doing research across the country to find out what are some of the consistencies with the profession, both public and private sector, and what are some of the technical requirements for both public and private sector. I really began to shape some courses after that. So.
Yeah, I like that. And actually, kind of a follow-up question to that. You spoke about this at the high school level and now even at the university level, just this idea of being with people that are like-minded, equally motivated. Kind of on a more general perspective, what does it do for a college student? I mean, I've told students before and probably didn't really think too hard what I was trying to say, but college is a make or break experience. You make it or you can break it.
Yeah.
But what is having that nice core of friends who are like-minded, equally driven, really motivated to do something good for your community? Like, how does that shape your experience?
There's a book by John Maxwell, I think it's called The Level 5 Leader, and he quotes a professor, and this professor said, you're the average of the 5 people that you associate yourself with the most. You're the average of that. What the conversation is about, places you go, things you do, you're the average of that. And when you look at the circles, that you associate yourself with, there are several things that you have to take in consideration. I think the first thing that I was exposed to was diversity. Not only a diversity in ethnicity, but a diversity in thought. You had people that would challenge you to get better with things. So what that did for us, that core group, we were able to share, and I was able to, be a part of it. And I want to be careful because it wasn't a clique. It was just a group of us that we had the same classes at the same time. We ate at the same time. And it was literally, we'd be in the lunchroom and say, hey man, did you finish so-and-so with the class? And all of a sudden, we wouldn't even sit with each other because we really didn't know each other until we started seeing each other in all of our classes. And we started sitting and eating lunch together. And we started talking about the professors together. Don't put that on. No, I'm joking. We started talking about professors, and then we started talking about, all of these other things. And then we just created this bond, and we kind of made the commitment that, hey, listen, we're gonna make it through this. There were times that were difficult. I lost my grandmother when, in my first year in grad school. That was very, very, very difficult. And these were the guys that gave me a card and said, listen, I understand it's tough. I understand that this is something that you don't want to go through, but you still got to make it. So even if I got to drag you, let's go. And that was very encouraging and inspiring and motivating. And likewise, you had issues and catastrophes in other families, and we were always just kind of there. Having a support, having a friendship, having a bond, and having someone who has the same goal and motivation as you is very, very vitally important when going through college. The one thing I wouldn't encourage is to go at it alone. Neither one of us stayed on campus. We were all commutes. So that, if I would just you know, come to school, go to my class, maybe eat a little something, and then go home. You know, and that was kind of like my life. And then these guys were here. And then when we all started grad school, we'd be in the Center for Urban Studies, room 140. And that's kind of where we, you know, stay late, order a pizza, and type up the thesis, you know, and things of that sort. So, so that bond is very important. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I would definitely have to agree with that. I mean, it was actually Nate said something very similar, you know, just about the connections that he made when he was there, and you know, you're gonna always be in this power dynamic between your professors and your colleagues, and as much as they tell us that we're all colleagues, I mean, there's always gonna be that power dynamic.
Yeah,
so like, you definitely need to have that support network to first off figure out what's going on in class, because sometimes you know
you don't know
exactly, and you know. You're all vying for everyone's approval, but at the same time, you know, like grad school, for example, can be very, like, depressing. It can be very challenging. I mean, there are days that you're probably asking yourself, why on earth am I doing this? But to be able to have, like, that network to know that, like, when you graduate, you can go out to the community, you're spread out all over the place, but hey, you want to do this project in this one neighborhood, and you know somebody who's in there, it's like, well, you already have that bond, so you can, you know, reach out to those networks.
That's what it was. And when people saw me, you know, I would go to our Weed and Seed meetings. Weed and Seed was the greatest thing at the time because I was in the community, I was engaged. I go to Weed and Seed meetings. Hey, listen, you know, there's Art. He's a student at the University of Buffalo, and he's going to graduate, and he's going to help make better communities. Because they saw me grow up. You know, they saw me ride my bike, you know, when I was a kid, and now here I am, you know, getting my degree. And I had every bit of passion in me to help this city grow, you know. And I just went away for a little bit, but I'm back.
Are you happy to be back?
I'm very happy to be back. This is great.
We're happy to have you back.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else you just wanted to share? Or,
no, I think this is fun.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, if you want to.
Sure.
Find this button.